we look at the basis for international trade कि क्यों international trade जो है वो किन किन चीजों पे डिपेंड करता है और क्यों, like why it continues to exist, right? So the first one is difference in national resources, which is very it's very obvious. It's like the idea behind this is जो हमारे पूरे दुनिया का रिसोर्स बेस है, जो डिस्ट्रीब्यूशन ऑफ रिसोर्सेज है, वो बहुत ज्यादा डिफरेंट है. मतलब एक रीजन में एक पर्टिकुलर मिनरल जो है या एक पर्टिकुलर रिसोर्स जो है वो बहुत ज्यादा अवेलेबल है, एंड वी कैन हार्नेस दैट रिसोर्स एंड वी कैन यूटिलाइज इट फॉर क्रिएटिंग समथिंग और द अदर, बट इट्स लैकिंग इन सम अदर प्लेस विच प्रोबेबली हैज एन अवेलेबिलिटी ऑफ सम अदर रिसोर्स. तो रिसोर्सेज जो है वो बहुत ज्यादा वाइडली वेरी करते हैं फ्रॉम रीजन टू रीजन, राइट? एंड वी विल सी व्हाई दे वेरी फ्रॉम रीजन टू रीजन इन अ व्हाइल, बट दैट्स व्हाट द बेसिक आइडिया बिहाइंड दिस इज. क्योंकि रिसोर्स बेस जो है वो डिफरेंट है, इसलिए अलग अलग कंट्रीज, अलग अलग रीजन्स जो है वो अलग अलग तरीके के गुड्स प्रोड्यूस करते हैं और फिर वो गुड्स जाके इंटरनेशनली ट्रेड किए जाते हैं, जिसकी वजह से उस गुड का अवेलेबिलिटी, एटलीस्ट if every region is not able to produce that good, then every region should at least be able to purchase that good, consume that good, and that is why international trade exists, right? So we'll look at this point in detail. It's divided into like 2-3 sub points. So difference in national resources. The world's natural resources are unevenly distributed due to these following things. One thing that I want you to notice here is एक जगह पे हम कह रहे हैं difference in national resources. इसका मतलब है कि एक नेशन के पास जो रिसोर्सेज है वो डिफरेंट है. एक कंट्री जो है वो डिफरेंट तरह के रिसोर्सेज पोजेस करता है, उसके अंडर, उसके जुरिस्डिक्शन के अंदर अलग अलग तरह के रिसोर्सेज हैं. So these are national resources that are present in a country and which belong to the nation itself. So these are national resources. And the world's natural resources are unevenly distributed. This means कि natural resources जो है, जो हमारे when we talk about natural resources, we basically mean land, right, and minerals, and which we obviously extract from land, and then we mean the flora and the fauna of a particular region. We all sorts of resources that are available to us naturally, जो हमें कहीं से प्रोड्यूस नहीं करने पड़ते, जो हमें एक्सट्रैक्ट करने पड़ते हैं, बट देन दे आर प्रेजेंट इन नेचर इन सम फॉर्म और द अदर. सो दीज आर कॉल्ड नेचुरल रिसोर्सेज. और ये नेचुरल रिसोर्सेज जो है ये बहुत ही वाइडली डिस्ट्रीब्यूटेड है और बहुत ही अनइवन डिस्ट्रीब्यूशन है इन नेचुरल रिसोर्सेज का. तो ये नेचुरल रिसोर्सेज किस जगह में कितना अवेलेबल है, that comes under national resources, but then for now this is natural resources. So the world's natural resources are unevenly distributed due to the following reasons. The first is geological structure. Let's look at this. The geological structure determines the mineral resource base. तो एक जगह का कैसा जियोलॉजिकल स्ट्रक्चर है, उसकी ज्योग्राफी, एक एरिया की ज्योग्राफी क्या है, वो डिटरमाइन करता है कि उसका मिनरल रिसोर्स बेस कैसा है, राइट? मतलब like a particular mineral or a particular resource is available in an area depending on the kind of geological factors that are influencing or that are dominating in that area. Also, topographical differences ensure diversity in flora and fauna of a region. Topographical differences say हम we're basically referring to when we talk about the topography of a region, मतलब जैसे माउंटेन्स हो गए, जैसे प्लेन्स हो गए, जैसे हिली एरियाज हो गए, या कोस्टल एरियाज हो गए. So when we talk about the this segmented division of areas, when we talk about mountains, and then when we talk about altitudinal variations, that's when we were considering the topography of a region कि कितना उसका altitude different है, right? So how much distance that area has from the sea level, that's when we're talking about topography. तो टोपोग्राफिकल डिफरेंसेस जो है वो फ्लोरा एंड फोना को डिटरमाइन करता है. बाय फ्लोरा एंड फोना वी मीन द kind of plants or vegetation that we'll see in an area, that's flora. And when we talk about fauna, we mean the type of wildlife that we will see in an area, right? So flora is basically vegetation, and when we talk about fauna, that's wildlife, right? So so topographical differences ensure diversity in flora and fauna of a region. मतलब जितना वो area, so in mountains we do not see a lot of those species of flora and fauna which are present in plains. Also in plains we do not see the presence of that sort of flora and fauna which are present in mountains, or which can survive in mountains. So that's what it means. So because of that अब resource base भी अलग हो गया. तो topography की वजह से हमारा जो नेचुरल रिसोर्स बेस है वो अलग हो गया. तो अब हमारी जो प्रोडक्शन है वो भी वाइडली वेरी करेगी. सो इन अ लिटिल हिली एरियाज दे विल so we'll see as an example, in a little bit of cold areas there will be the production of wool, because ऐसी जगहों में sheep जो है उसको cattle की तरह यूज की जाती है, और so they can produce wool in those areas. In plains we won't find a lot of, in plateaus and all we'll find sheep cultivation, but in plains we won't be able to see that. In plains we'll see the production of anything else, right? So that's what it means. When we have a different flora and fauna, we have a very different resource base, and because of the difference in our resource base, the kind of goods that we will produce are also going to be different. So this leads to specialization. This leads to one region being good at something and doing what it's best at, and इसकी वजह से जो है international trade होता है. तो we have an example here. Lowlands are good for agricultural production while mountains facilitate tourism. So this is what we were talking about. So lowlands are good for agriculture. जो हमारा northern belt है, जो हमारी country का, states like Punjab and Haryana, Uttar Pradesh, West Bengal, even the northern parts of West Bengal, and so these states which fall in the plain region, right, which are also flooded by three very important rivers and the tributaries of these rivers. So these areas are very good in agricultural production. सबसे ज़्यादा agricultural production जो है ये इन areas में होता है, और सबसे densely populated area भी हमारा ये northern belt ही है हमारी country का. तो ये जगह जो है ये एग्रीकल्चरल प्रोडक्शन के लिए बहुत सही है. पर अगर हम देखेंगे, अगर हम माउंटेन्स का बात करेंगे, तो माउंटेन्स में जो है एग्रीकल्चरल प्रोडक्शन इतनी सही हो नहीं सकती. However, mountains are good for something else. Mountains provide this sort of scenic beauty, a sort of natural scenic beauty which attracts a lot of tourists, and this facilitates tourism. तो अब tourists so this becomes a tourist spot. अब यहाँ पे tourism जो है उसको as a commercial activity उसको develop किया जा सकता है, and money can be earned from tourism as well. In fact, huge amounts of money can be earned from tourism, right? So there can be a lot of entrepreneurs developing this tourism industry, and there can be a lot of people sell handmade handicrafts, and the people like to buy these souvenirs for places that they have visited. तो इन चीजों का जो है tourism के through इन चीजों का जो है sale हो सकता है, and this is possible because the topography is different from and the topography is perfect for an activity like tourism, right? So that's what it means. So मतलब topography जो है वो हमारा resource base भी determine करता है, और वो ये भी determine करता है, because वो हमारा resource base determine करता है, तो वो ये भी decide करता है कि कैसी तरह की production activity होगी वहाँ पे, कैसी commercial activities होगी वहाँ पे, right? So moving on, the second one is mineral resources. तो मिनरल रिसोर्सेज जो है जिसकी हम बात कर रहे थे थोड़ी देर पहले, सो दीज आर वेरी अनइवनली डिस्ट्रीब्यूटेड throughout the whole world, and so mineral resources provide the basis for industrial development. मतलब एक जगह पे एक ऐसा mineral resource available होगा, वो determine करता है हमारा industrial development. मतलब अगर किसी जगह में you know in a certain particular place we have a lot of, let's say we have raw materials for producing, we have all the perfect raw materials for producing steel. So ऐसी जगहों में we will see a lot of industries which are manufacturing steel, and that area, that region, even if it's not a country, that region will specialize in steel production. And our country is, in fact, actually India is very specialized in the manufacturing of steel. It is the 7th largest steel producer in the world, according to data of a few years earlier. But anyway, but that's what it means. जहाँ पे जिस area में जैसा resource base होगा, वहाँ पे उसी तरह का industrial development होगा, right? So mineral resources are unevenly distributed, and that is why industrial. So this is the basis for industrial development, and that's why different sort of industries come up in different areas, and this also leads to specialization, right? Which is the very basis for international trade. The next thing is climate. Climate is also a very vital factor, and it influences the flora and fauna and the diversity in production. So this is a bit clear if we look at an example. Wool is produced in cold areas, just like I was saying, and rubber and coffee are produced well in tropical regions. So because the area is cold, and that is why it is suitable for the cultivation of the rearing of sheep. So that is why wool can be produced in an area like that. Also because it's a tropical region, so वैसा tropical climate होगा बहुत ज़्यादा, it will be very hot and very dry, and that is suitable for the production of stuff like rubber and coffee and bananas. ऐसी चीजों के लिए वैसा ही climatic condition चाहिए होता है जैसा tropics में है. So that is why these things can be produced in this area. So that's what it said कि climate influences the flora and fauna, and it by influencing the flora and fauna, it basically it brings about a diversity in production, right? So this is how the difference in national resources, or the uneven distribution of natural resources is basically a basis for international trade. The next point that we'll be looking at is population. तो पॉपुलेशन भी इंटरनेशनल ट्रेड का एक बेसिस है, और पॉपुलेशन भी इंटरनेशनल ट्रेड को जो है अफेक्ट करता है. एंड वी सी हाउ द साइज एंड डिस्ट्रीब्यूशन ऑफ पीपल अफेक्ट द टाइप एंड वॉल्यूम ऑफ ट्रेड. मतलब एक एरिया में कितने लोग हैं और कितना कैसा उस पॉपुलेशन का जो है डिस्ट्रीब्यूशन है, हाउ द डेमोग्राफिक्स ऑफ एन एरिया इज distributed over a particular region affects the type of trade, and it affects the volume of trade. So volume of trade is a very important terminology here, and this is something that we'll discuss later on. But let's see how population has an effect on international trade. The first one is cultural factors. So cultural factors may so when different regions have different forms of culture, when they practice different forms of culture, there's this development of distinctive forms of art and craft. तो एक एरिया का जैसा कल्चर है वैसे ही आर्ट एंड क्राफ्ट वाले चीजें वो प्रोड्यूस करते हैं. जिन चीजों का जहाँ पे जो डिमांड होता है, जहाँ पे उन चीजों की ज्यादा वैल्यू होती है, वो लोग वैसी चीजें प्रोड्यूस करते हैं. सो दिस entire cultural aspect actually has a effect in production activities of a region. So culture impacts the production activities of a region, and because these might be very valuable in the world market. That's why they get traded internationally. For example, let's say we know कि China produces very fine brocades and porcelain stuff, right? Also we know कि नॉर्थ अफ्रीकन लेदर वर्क बहुत फेमस है. ऑल्सो इंडोनेशियन बाटिक क्लॉथ जो होती है वो भी इंटरनेशनली बहुत फेमस है. तो ये चीजें दीज आर इंजीनियस टू दीज आर इंडिजिनियस प्रोडक्ट्स ऑफ दीज पर्टिकुलर एरियाज एंड दीज आर इन्फ्लुएंस्ड बाय द the culture of those areas. These are made by local people of these regions, and since they are very valuable internationally, and since they enjoy a very high demand from people all over the world, these get traded internationally. So that's what it says. It says that cultural factors are also a basis for international trade. The next thing is size of population. So why the size of population is important is because the density affects volume of international and internal and external trade. I'll tell you what this means. What this means is एक एरिया का जितना डेंसिटी होता है दैट अफेक्ट्स द वॉल्यूम ऑफ इंटरनेशनल एंड इंटरनल एंड एक्सटर्नल ट्रेड. मतलब एक एरिया अगर बहुत ज्यादा डेंसली पॉपुलेटेड है, इट हैज अ वेरी very dense population according to the size of the area. जितना बड़ा वो एरिया है उसमें बहुत सारे लोग रह रहे हैं. तो whatever goods are going to be produced in that area, whatever agricultural or industrial goods are going to be produced in that area, a majority of that will be consumed by people will be sold in the local market. It will be consumed by the local people. तो मतलब जितना ज्यादा डेंसिटी होता है उतना उसका इंटरनल ट्रेड होगा, बट एक्सटर्नल ट्रेड उतना नहीं होगा. इफ दिस एरिया वाज very if it has a very low population, if it wasn't densely populated, तो ये जो प्रोडक्शन एक्टिविटीज हो रही है, जो एग्रीकल्चरल गुड्स है या जो इंडस्ट्रियल गुड्स है, ये शायद एक्सपोर्ट कर दिए जाते हैं. सो दैट विल लीड टू एक्सटर्नल ट्रेड. बट सिंस दिस एरिया इज वेरी डेंसली पॉपुलेटेड एंड all the goods are being consumed in the local market by local people, that is why there is a very low level of external trade and a very high volume of internal trade, right? So that's what it says. So that is why the size of population in a particular area is important. Also, the standard of living determines demand for better quality imported goods. तो एक area का कैसा so when we look at the standard of living, जितना उनका standard of living better है, उतने वो high quality goods demand करेंगे, उतने वो imported goods demand करेंगे. And if an area has people with very low standard of living in households, so that area will not be it will only want local stuff that it can just make do with. It won't demand something which is very high quality and which may be imported from other countries. So again, this also affects the volume of internal and external trade. तो जितना high standard of living होगा उतना लोग high quality goods मांगेंगे, उतना वो चीजें import करेंगे, and this will lead to external trade. But when the standard of living is low, people will want to just buy whatever is present in the local market, just something that they can use, something that they can just do with, and so then they won't want to get imported stuff. So this will lead to very low levels of external trade, and internal trade will be more in an area like that. So that is how population also affects the level of the volume of trade and the direction of trade, and it acts as a basis for international trade. It basically affects how international trade is happening. After this, we have a couple more points to study. Hope you understand just this part of it.